Hello everyone, and welcome to the Deep Blue Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deep Blue Renegade. I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 345. Today is Saturday, November 28th, 2020, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is a hazy Saturday afternoon, and this is first coffee. But I understand that if I wait too long, then our friend the sun will start slowly sweeping its way across the room. And I'm like, like, rather not. So, but I did end up doing some rearranging in the room, so the thing I was using to prop up the computer before is now at least put away somewhat. So that's why the perspective is a little bit different. Hopefully it's not too crazy. I tried it on a couple of Zoom calls this week, and it's pretty good. If I start noticing that my neck feels sore from doing this, then maybe I'll go back to the previous way, but there's just not a lot of surface area left in this room, so it's like, oh well. Not too much that I can do about it. Or maybe there are things that I can do about it, but it probably involves removing something from here. So, let's start with this. So this is how much yarn I have left over from my 10-stitch blanket. So I was trying to optimize this, but at some point it's just like, meh. And I ended up running out in the single color section of this, so I wasn't even able to make it to this one, which means that I ended up using about 420 grams of yarn-ish in the blanket itself. So the 10-stitch blanket is a Frankie Brown pattern. What is it? It is free on Ravelry, and it results in a really cool texture. But for someone who likes to do yarn chicken as an extreme sport, because every time you go around, the blanket gets bigger. If I decide, and based on the way that I decided to do the color blocks, you need more and more yarn to complete subsequent rounds. So I should have realized when I ran out of the Martha that there was just no way Guide to the Galaxy was going to get me too much further. But basically what ended up happening was I left you guys here, and I ended up knitting all of this side, all of that side, and most of this side in order to wrap this bad boy up. I guess I got it in me that I just wanted to finish this baby blanket right away. So, and then I ended up doing a slope transition to just sort of hide the fact I didn't make it to the end. I don't know, whatever. And the other thing that ended up happening was I ran out of Martha 4 rows before the end of this, but it's not the end of the world. So, not too crazy. I managed to get, 2 and most of the third side done. So it turned out that it's about 25 inches squared. For some reason, one side is half an inch bigger than the other. I don't know why. But I figure it is a pretty good sized blanket. makes me wonder how ridiculously huge one could make one of these, but it was exactly what I needed. This was most of my like election night knitting, so and it was simple enough that it was something that I could work on while reading subtitles. So not too crazy. So what's, and this is going to end up being sent to my sister, probably along with a package of some other baby things as well. But I haven't started anything else to head towards that goal right now, so I don't know if that's going to involve, or would it be? I haven't decided what I'm going to knit next on this project, or if I'm going to take a break for a bit and be like, yeah, like it. Probably not. So with the leftovers of this, I will probably end up making a baby hat, and we'll figure out where else I want to go from there. But I just haven't decided what to do next yet. As you do. So overall, pretty happy. Definitely like a couple of stray threads here or there that I need to figure out what to do something about, but very vivid, very bright. Here, the light seems a little bit cloudy, but I think that gives a better idea of sort of the colors that we're dealing with. So the Martha ended up bringing, I think, a lot of cheerfulness to it with the yellow, and then the Guide to the Galaxy is a teal, pink brown, and Hoochie Mama is a sort of a bluer teal, pink, and black. So not too crazy. And this is the second time I've knit this blanket. I did knit a dark blue, sort of tealy light blue, and then a blue-green marl for my brother's son, however long, or whatever, like, however long ago that was. And then I did a different Frankie Brown pattern for my niece, who was the first of the grandchildren generation. So, and my sister didn't need another baby blanket for whatever her son. He was like, yeah, I already have one. Good. Like, okay. So I probably do need to, or what would it be? It'd be the case where the sister who's having her third kid wants toys. She thinks that the stuffies are pretty awesome, and the sister who's having her first kid will take anything. I'm not sure whether or not I have the will to make everything, but she would take it. So the big hurdle is over, the baby blanket is done. It doesn't feel like it took forever and ever and ever to do, which is good. Though I will say that working on the body of this sweater does seem a little Sisyphean. I don't know if part of it is just that it's actually a little bit challenging when you have such a loosey-goosey fabric to actually be able to measure to see what's going on. So this is the Spray. It is a colorwork yoke sweater by Skein Deer Knits, and we'll bring that in close enough and be like, ooh, ah. It's blown out the background. The foreground is looking pretty darn good. And what was it? Like this week, Ellie of Skein Deer ended up releasing a series of hat patterns based upon her sweaters, and one of those hats is the Isbray, and she actually did a YouTube tutorial on how to do the ladder back jacquard. But what I found to be very fascinating was that I got to see the inside of Ellie's Isbray, and I think that this is definitely an after effect of the fact this is definitely a consequence of using a thicker yarn for the color work than the body, because you just can't see any of the pattern on the wrong side. But you could see her wrong side pattern loud and clear. So what would it be? It's definitely the case where I don't know, I just find it to be interesting, but not too bad, not too crazy. But it's just been driving me a little bit batty. And what it really boils down to is like the 10-stitch blanket, like you're working on stuff, but there is like a lot of nice stopping points as you're going back and forth. See, this is my back and forth hand. So you're just sort of typewriting back and forth and slowly but surely making your way to an end, and then you get to turn a corner, and then so there's still like whatever. You can see your forward progress, you can see yourself inching your way to some sort of conclusion. But because I don't know, I don't think that 6 stitches per inch is like a gauge that is super loosey-goosey for Villemicelle lace, but you could certainly knit Villemicelle lace at a tighter gauge without any problem. And maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to knit it at a significantly looser gauge than this. Like, I feel like it's making a nice fabric, but it's definitely light fingering and in terms of weight. So like when I hold it up certain ways, it measures differently than if I hold it up another way. And so it'd be the case where if I use like 3 different ways of holding it to measure whether or not I've made it to the body length, I get 3 different answers. One of which says I'm there, one of which says I'm an inch shy, and one of which says that I'm half an inch short. And then I'll knit another round, and I will get the same answer again. Excuse me. So that's what's been driving me a little bit crazy lately. So right now I sort of have it gently in my lap. I don't know if my stitch marker is pretty sizable right now. And it may not have even really been necessary to have the stitch marker, because basically I placed it at the armhole separation. So I'm measuring from my beginning of round, which is currently in the middle of the armpit, to that. So this currently says I'm an inch shy of getting ready for the ribbing, and not too much that I could do. But this week, because I was on vacation, I got to sleep in to ridiculous hours and watch, or what is it? this week I watched Samurai Champloo, and it came with an English audio track, and it also had an English subtitle track. And this was interesting because what would it be? It would be one thing if I was just listening to the English, it'd be another thing if I was reading. But if you're reading and listening and then you laugh when they translate differently, and sometimes the audio got it right, sometimes the text got it right, and sometimes it was just funny because they swore differently. Sometimes, or what would it be? Or it'd be the case where one of the interesting things that I noticed, I think, from an early episode was that there was apparently sort of like a Japanese tradition for how you paid for your fare to cross the river of death. And then there was a Greek one, and then there's the Greek one. So the audio was like, you're gonna pay Charon, who will help you cross the river Styx. And the other one was like spelled out on the screen was like this entirely different thing. So I didn't end up researching it, but it was just a case where that was what kept my mind engaged, was comparing comparing the translations, because they were actually done separately. What would it be? The translations were done separately, and that was enjoyable. Unfortunately, that series was only one season, so I haven't quite figured out what my next one's going to be, or if I'm actually running out of series. Maybe not, but as you do. So I managed to knit from the armpits down while doing this. And had I not had a ridiculous marathon cooking session the past couple of days, maybe I would actually be a little bit further along, but I didn't knit very much Thursday or Friday. I did knit a little bit on Friday, but I was busy cooking for the entire week. Like the 7 days starting yesterday into the future. Oh, so I did have what would it be? Only one failure amongst all of the different things. All of my side dishes ended up turning out great. What would it be? But I think I got tricked by my meat thermometer, because how much time it took to get from like 35 Fahrenheit to like 165 Fahrenheit did not match up with how long it took to get from 165 Fahrenheit to 180. So I'm pretty sure I screwed up. I overcooked the bird, which is sad. I don't know. I made a horrifying amount of gravy, so, but it is slightly annoying that that ended up happening. There's definitely something to be said about that stupid piece of plastic that pops when the bird's cooked from Butterball. Just saying. My bird was too fancy for that, so oh well. I took beautiful pictures for Instagram because it did look very, very beautiful, but it was definitely the case where I did like the quick slit down the breastbone and the breast meat had already pulled away from the bone. I was like, this isn't gonna be good. like, I know the conclusion to this story. But because of how much food ended up getting made, this meant that I took the carcass, pretty roughly broke it up, tried to strip as much as I could, or I stripped lackadaisically the meat off of it, and then immediately put it in a Ziploc baggie and tossed it in the freezer. So I will be making the rice porridge, the jook, Jook, sometime in the future. I'm not even sure that I have enough rice in the house to make it, so it's probably okay. But I do need to figure out where to get more. And I might need to figure out where to get more soon, because with how much gravy I have, I definitely need rice to go with it. So was the case with the stuffing. Like, I text my mom and I'm like, I read the family cookbook and that isn't your recipe. What's your recipe? And it turns out that my mom makes stuffing like I make chili, which is, I have some rough guidelines, but generally it's just like a sort of do what feels good sort of situation. But my mom isn't normally like a cook by feel sort of person, so she's like, I think it's about a teaspoon of sage. So that ended up turning out super duper delicious. She just recommended celery and onion, but I had some carrots that needed to get used up in something, so I also threw in some carrots as well, and it was very tasty. Pretty happy about that one. I didn't end up doing the baby bok choy recipe, just because I realized at some point that it was just a horrifying amount of food, and I didn't need to have 2 green vegetables. So I ended up, when I got my shipment of vegetables, it came with a recipe for green beans, and that ended up turning out really tasty. I had slightly less green beans than the recipe called for, but it was like fresh garlic sliced thinly. It called for dried ginger, but I ended up I have a jar of liquefied fresh ginger that just threw some in, called it good. And they called for oil, but I ended up using butter because it was pretty close at hand. So I just cooked the butter in the frying pan until it was starting to brown, added the garlic, stir, added the green beans, which I had blanched earlier in the day, and then dumped in the ginger, and then I added a little bit of soy sauce because they said to salt. I'm like, garlic and ginger need soy sauce. They just said regular salt. So gave it a quick whiz of soy sauce, and so it was a very nice stir fry, and it did a good job of sort of, what would it be? It ended up doing a really good job of sort of cutting the richness of the meal. I did some sort of hybrid recipe between sweet potato casserole and like roasted butternut squash. So I roasted butternut squash, separated it, mashed it, and then I ended up using that as the body of the casserole, and then put a streusel, a pecan streusel topping on top of it and baked it, and that was pretty tasty. Though, could I have made less? Yes. Should I have made less? Probably. So if I end up doing long range planning, divvying of leftovers in the freezer, there might be a fairly significant amount of that casserole put in the container. So would it be, I ended up roasting 2 butternut squashes. I should have realized that one would have been plenty. And I ended up doing mashed potatoes, and so I ended up learning something cool when I did the deep fat potatoes. So one thing that you can do or one thing that apparently you should do is after you boil your potatoes, like dump out all the water, put the potatoes back in the pan and put that back on the stove and let it steam out for 5 minutes. And so that allows a lot of that water to evaporate. So you end up sort of having a bit drier potatoes. And then it makes it way easier to mash and the consistency is a lot better. So what I did was I started to get the potatoes all mashed in the KitchenAid mixer, and then I dumped in my garlic cream mixture. This is something that I learned from my husband's aunt. So what you do, instead of like warming like milk on the stove to put in your potatoes, like when they do Thanksgiving, they buy a gallon of heavy cream. So they just put heavy cream in everything. So I ended up getting a pint of heavy cream, and so I had like a cup of heavy cream, and then I ended up putting, I don't know, probably a third of a head of garlic in there. And so then while the potatoes were boiling, I was basically cooking the warming up the cream, but then also sort of cooking down the garlic. And it's so good. And then so I then took that cream garlic mixture and just poured it in as the mixer was going, and then scraped everything in. It was really tasty. And so, what was it? I had to laugh today because I found a shirt I had worn the last time I made potatoes, and they were very stringy and strange. But I learned something about cooking potatoes in between that time, and I really need to get that shirt washed. I don't know why it missed the laundry, but I was gonna wear it today because I think it's a really cute shirt. I'm like, nope. Nope. So the potatoes of the last time I made potatoes were sort of stringy and gluey, but these ones were perfect and reminded me of my mom's potatoes. So this probably means that she would do the waiting step, but it wasn't ever obvious to me as a child that she was waiting for them to steam out. Oh well. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think. And then I ended up doing cranberry stuff 2 different ways. So I got the 12-ounce unit of cranberries, and I just split it in half. So half of the cranberries went into the pot. I added half a cup of orange juice and 3/8 of the cup of sugar, and you sort of boil that until all the cranberries explode. And so the skin adds pectin, and that's sort of what makes it jelly. And so you just go until everything seems to be fairly broken down. Then you like scrape it all up and stick it in the fridge. That was pretty tasty. What would it be? And it's like so easy. It makes me happy. The other half I made into salsa, and I'm probably going to eat some after signing off here. I use the first recipe that comes up when you search cranberry salsa on the Googles. What was it? I didn't have any green onions for it. I have used the green onions in the past, and it is tasty, but instead of the green onions, I just added another jalapeno. And what would it be? Not too crazy. So it's cranberries, jalapeno, a lot of cilantro, lime juice, and sugar. And I just ended up whizzing that together in my blender. It was really tasty. But then for the rest of the day, I always forget to wear gloves when handling jalapenos. And so for the rest of the day, it felt like I had this mysterious burn, which was the capsaicin. So whenever I got my hand like close to the oven, or I got my hand wet for some reason, I'd be like, so I made sure not to touch my eyes. Like, I never learn. Like, I don't know why. But, what would it be? such is life. So that's what would be, do as I say, wear a glove, not as I do, don't. Oh well. So, but all of those shenanigans were like 2 pretty solid days of cooking. And the last thing were the pies. So my husband did end up convincing me to make a pumpkin pie for him. What would it be? For some reason, it didn't seem to work out as well to do. Like, I managed to get it together and to roll out my crust, but making like a single batch of crust, which makes the top and bottom for the pie, a pumpkin pie only needs a bottom, so I did 1.5 times the recipe. But for whatever reason, it made it sort of hard. It sounds like the children are having a lot of fun. But for some reason, it was just like, it was very easy to work, but then it like really wanted to be sticky. Like it was much, much stickier than usual. So like I made it work, but it was like, ooh, this is a little hard. But my husband convinced me to make a pumpkin. He went to the store on Thursday and found the missing ingredients. And like I pulled him aside before he went. I was like, get the can of pumpkin, and everything you need is on the can of pumpkin. And then I'm like, but this is the one thing on the list which we already have. So we ended up, or what would it be? One thing was that I didn't notice the phone ringing, so it turned out we didn't have cloves. And he could have bought cloves, but I didn't answer the phone. And then the other thing was that can of stuff that I had in my cupboard was sweetened condensed milk, and what you needed for the recipe was evaporated milk. But I ended up dumping it in anyways, and he said it tasted really good. So that was a substitution for something that I guess wasn't important. And then the apple pie was good as usual, maybe a little bit more liquidy, but oh well, such is life. So that was the ridiculous feast, and we will be eating it for quite some time. So, but in terms of vegetables, like I have leeks that I can make into leeks gratin when we run out of the green beans. And then I have the baby bok choy and the mushrooms that I can also make for the future as well. I think that would be pretty tasty with mashed potatoes too. Or I need to go and find rice. So we should be doing okay. All right. Readjust. That was a long segment on that. And then I forgot that we have spinning. So this was just whatever, my wheel has been slightly out frame for most of the episode. The one thing that I do find very interesting is that I do have better sitting posture when I'm spinning at a wheel. And I find it very, very hard to just sit for a while with like legs straight, no cross, nothing. So just something interesting to think about. But I am now, I think, more than halfway through this guy. Yeah. So my giant hands now just have 3 fingers on them. So, not too crazy. But as a result, what would it be? And I have most of this one left to go, but it's not like it's a big deal. So it is looking like I am making some pretty decent spinning progress on this one. I'm not in a super duper hurry. I would rather be spending my time getting the Isbray finished well ahead of time. So there's that. And it may be the case where what I end up doing this afternoon is actually grabbing the yarn for the Viajante instead. Just because that's sort of what I'm feeling right now is would be in terms of waiting around for a project. Like, my cousin's been waiting for 5 years. Maybe I should maybe I should do that. So I just have to figure out which purple I want to use. I have, I think, 2 potential ones. It's just a matter of whether or not one of them is a little bit too variegated. So I've got this one, which is the Versace-Kuchen, which is a blurple, and it is very solid and it is very beautiful, and I sort of want it from silk. And then I have, this is why it's convenient to be at the, I have this guy here. Bring that a little bit closer. So one of these ends is much more pink-y purple, and then it sort of has the darky bluer purple in it as well. So what would it be? So there's definitely like some black, blue, and pink in here. So I don't know if that would be visually distracting. Like, this is the side that has a lot of pink on it. It's sort of showing up a bit cloudy right now. I don't know, it's a hazy day, so that doesn't help. So I don't know if this would be too variegated for it. It's probably too variegated. But this was the one that I was originally thinking of, but I think I need to back away from that plan. Not that tune. So I think that's what I want to do right now, is go after that. So we shall see. Like, I understand like baby hats and toys would also be pretty quick, but I'm sort of liking the idea of a pretty simple and straightforward project. Yeah, this guy is way, way, way more solid. But sort of has like subtle hints and shifts of color in it, which definitely aren't going to show through on the video, but such is life. So I think this is gonna end up being the winner, and it will be probably most similar to mine in the grand scheme of things. So I bet that's happening next. Oh, and it's a monster 344 grams gained. Oh well, not too crazy. So I think that's everything this week. We got some random cooking talk in the middle of knitting and spinning, but such is life. I hope you guys all have a really wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.